Should have started with the festival stuff.
Yeah. I feel like the moment we hop on this, we need to start recording because that's when all the good conversations have. Okay, so we're gonna fuck around and find out what happens.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we were meant to be joined by Paul to talk about managing the post-show, but I don't think he's jumping on. So Court and I are going to give it a wing.
We're going to figure out how to do it. Before we dig in, let's go through our sweet and our sours for the week. I made sure I committed time yesterday to think about mine. So I guess I'll go first. My sweet was I got my hair extensions in, and I know you know exactly how that feels, which is just so nice. It's been 2 years since I've had my hair like this, and like this is how it's supposed to feel. So I'm like, I feel like me again, which is just really, really nice.
Exactly. Thank you. Because like when I cut my hair off, I was just like, I went into this bubble. Do you remember how you put out on your stories the other day, like 10 things that you can do to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
And one of them was have a shower every day.
Yeah.
I literally stopped showering because I was just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care I just don't care about myself. I don't care about my, and I know that sounds super disgusting, but I was just like, I was in such a low point. And I'm not saying that my hair caused that, but the way that I perceived myself and how pretty I was without my hair definitely played a role.
Yeah. I have a heightened respect for women who lose their hair for cancer, going through chemo or things like that, because it plays a huge role, which is great. So that was my sweet. And then my sour is that I found out that I have really intense food allergies for all dairy and eggs.
How'd you find that out?
I got allergy testing done. I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram stories. I posted like a picture of my back and it had all these different. I need to send it to you. It's crazy. So they tested like, I think 100 different things, and it was insane, the reaction for dairy and eggs.
And it was allergy testing, not sensitive testing.
Like full on allergy testing.
Because we know how we feel about the sensitivity test.
Yes, it can change and all of that. So anyway, what's your sweet and sour?
I got 4 new clients this week. Yes.
Super sweet. I love that for you.
They've been so great. Like it's not often that I get clients that jump on board and they're super communicative from the get-go. They message me regularly, like in between their check-ins, let me know how it's going. And it's all very positive. And I feel like part of that is me putting out more positivity on social media and that, because I know they see my stories. But I also it gives me confidence that I'm moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. I love that for you.
Thank you. What was your sour? Oh, sorry, my sour. My sour was burnout. I was just telling Courtney before, I just feel like this week's been low. Like as much as I just say I was really positive, that was like, Courtney and I don't speak for 2 weeks. So it's like from Monday to now, I've just been feeling really low.
Do you think any of that has to do with the holidays? Because I know that you had said before on your Instagram that like you're kind of a Grinch. Do you feel like there's kind of like this underlying, or I don't even know if we want to call it subconscious effect?
I don't know. I think it's more me. When I put my head onto into something, or my mind onto something, I go 100% in. And I know you're very much the same.
Yeah.
And I feel like with how much I escalate my amount of effort towards something, I almost expect the reward to be the same. And it never is. And I always let myself down because of that. Yeah. And so I think for me, and I kind of spoke about this on my stories, journaling has been a real turning point for me, because even today I just had to be like, yes, you feel like shit and you're having like negative thoughts, but you still showed up for yourself today. You still did all your check-ins. You still went to the gym. You still ate all your food and stuff like that. And it's like those little things I need to keep reminding myself of.
Just how you're describing that, how it's so important to I wouldn't even say like necessarily journaling, but going through your day and being like, what about the shit that I did get done? Because like, I feel like in society, we're the kind of people that we always just look at the to-do list, right? But we did list, or the did done, or whatever list, like the things that we did get done, which is really, really important, because we can always like look at ourselves and be like, oh, I didn't do enough, or I didn't do this today, or I'm having a down day. But like, yeah, but what about all the shit that you did do?
Yeah.
And that's really fucking important.
Yeah. The way I kind of explain it to my clients is like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in life. It's like 1 + 1 - 3 - 4 plus
Verbal
6.
it out.
Yeah. plus 8. And then it's like, it's always these back and forth, but eventually you'll get that +2.
I love that.
What was the next question? What one thing you tried?
Something you tried and something you learned.
Something I tried. I'm trying to read a new style of book. So you know how like I'm very much into serial killer stuff.
Yeah.
I'm reading one now on it's like about a fashion journalist and her story.
That's
So
a little bit more peppy.
really. Yeah.
I
So
like
we're gonna see how that goes. So far not into it, but yeah, no one's been killed yet. But that's all right.
You're like, where's the murder? Where's
Yeah.
the excitement? Where's the thrill? I love that. And then
If I was
something
writing this, she would be dead already.
something that you learned.
That one's hard. I don't think I necessarily learned anything new, but I think that I learned a lot about myself. Like I kind of just mentioned about how I over anticipate and get too excited too soon, and I need to relax.
You're learning more about yourself.
Yeah.
Always. And we will keep learning that lesson until we actually fucking get it.
Yeah.
For me, something that I learned is how to make, because I don't know if you know, but I'm totally into the Ninja Creamy, like the protein ice cream thing. And I learned how to make a vegan version of it because I can't have the whey protein anymore, because vegan protein just has like that sandy texture, right? And you can't get that like creaminess. So I finally figured it out, and I'm very, very proud of myself. And something that I'm trying is a new Netflix series called Dynasty.
Oh, I'm trying something new too. I'm trying Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, tell me how that goes. We're gonna have
Mainly
to.
because I like the main character. I think he's very hot.
I love it. It's always like a great reason, a great incentive.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right, guys. So this is Femme Radio. I'm Daz.
And I'm Court, and we're redefining health. So before we dive into this amazing spin of a convo, please like, subscribe, and gift us 5 stars.
Okay. So how should we kind of structure this?
How do we do this? How do we talk?
Okay, let's go over, like, do we think that we can kind of use this as a Q&A, because we had a list of questions here that we wanted to ask Paul. So what we can do is we can pretend that our listeners have asked us these questions and we can answer them with our best.
Okay. Let's preface a little bit. And Paul created an amazing book, and I'm going to butcher it right now because I cannot think of like the exact name of it.
Getting your head around and not being shredded.
Yes. And basically, like the gist of it is, when we are competitors, we lose our identity after we compete, and we get fixed on like, I am a bodybuilder or I am a competitor, and we have this connection to this certain kind of physique and these certain habits and protocols, and we cling on to that for dear life and expect to hold on to that after we compete. And I've said this before, that like your stage physique is just a rental. Like, you don't get to keep that all the time, and we will hold on to it, and we hold on to these protocols, and we lose ourselves along the way. So trying to find, if we want to call it, for lack of a better term, that balance between being a competitor and then off season or whatever it is. So that is, I guess, like the gist of Paul's book. So we wanted to dig into that a little bit more, and we're just gonna ask questions for ourselves and then answer them how we think.
Yeah.
Be best.
So the first point that we had is, do you think the majority of people compete for the right reasons? And it kind of went on to, is it because they enjoy stepping on stage and everything else that entails being a bodybuilder? Or do you think it's because they think that they position themselves with a higher status over their peers? This is something that I'm particularly interested in, because you know that I've been learning a lot about human mating behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to be something that females do, particularly to position themselves as a higher status and of higher value to their mates. Like, that's why women get Botox, they change their hair regularly, they change their clothes. Like, you know, you've got women that change their clothes like 3 times a day kind of thing. Court and I are like tomboys, so we don't count. But you know that there's that saying that the boys have 2 girlfriends. They have like the tomboy girlfriend, they have like the pretty dressed up girlfriend kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I think that a lot of people do it to get a higher status on social media, and that is a form of value at the moment, because social media is such a big part of everyone's life. The more following that you have, the more attractive that you tend to be. Regardless of how attractive you actually are, it does bring attraction from the opposite sex. So I feel like that's why a lot of people compete, because if you look really good on stage and you look really good on social media, it gives you a big following. That's not taking away from the fact that people do necessarily want to improve their physique and look good, but I just don't see the need to step on stage unless you're in love with bodybuilding. From my perspective, I also think that coaches kind of fall into this pit. Myself in particular is who I'm referring to here, is because I don't necessarily want to compete, but because I coach competitors, I feel like I have to bring up that status and to kind of like set an example. And I would prefer to just kind of like prep for a photo shoot, but I feel like I have to step on stage to show, look, I've done this. And even though I've stepped on stage once, like I feel like I have to do it again to show, look, like I'm doing it too, kind of thing.
I think there's a level of, okay, there's always respect, but different kinds of respect, that like, if you are a coach, having that firsthand experience, right? Like, we know that experience and education are like really, really important. But if you go, like for you example, like if you're stepping on stage, you're understanding what all of your clients are going through, right? And even though everyone's going to have their own different experience in prep, at least you get that firsthand experience, right? And you can see that. So I do think it's important. I do think that a lot of people do want to compete because of the more of like, I don't know how to say it, like the look, but the social media thing. And so many people are like, oh, I don't care about like validation. I don't care about the opinion of others. But like, if you're posting shit on social media, you care about the opinions of others, because you look at those likes, you look at those comments. Like, that is what Instagram is. It is like this public photo album for people to like and engage with. And the more that we see that, the more that we get that, the more like validated we feel. I do feel like a lot of people want to compete for the look instead of the actual process itself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And you kind of had a follow-up question to that, is like, do you think that the post-show management has evolved over the last few years? And I wanted to touch on that in particular because I was kind of thinking about like old school bodybuilding in comparison to, you know, the present bodybuilding. And as much as I hate the term like a dirty bulk, and we know that that's not optimal and we don't encourage it to our clients or anything like that, I almost think that being okay with that terminology made it okay to let go of your physique in the off season.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I kind of feel like it's got a positive influence, but the methods behind it weren't positive.
I almost feel like it's a not a cop out, but like, let's just say somebody reverses. They do a reverse diet and they end up like binging and blowing up and whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing a dirty bulk. You know, it's kind of like they just like label it something and they're like, oh yeah, but I'm a bodybuilder, so it's okay.
Okay. So you're seeing it more as like they still probably had that issue with letting go of their physique, but they were using the term dirty bulk as an excuse for them to react that way.
Yes.
Okay. I can see it on both ends, but that's an interesting thought to just put out there.
And that's not for everybody. Like, different coaches do things differently, right? And I think as long as at the end of the day, the, I guess, ethics and morals behind all of it are within reason and it doesn't do harm for the client or for the coach, then I think it's fine. Like, some people might want to put on, like, let's just say a bikini girl, maybe they want to put on 20 pounds in the first week. Is it probably the healthiest thing to do, like really, really fast? Probably not. But if they feel like it's good for them and they feel better doing that, then maybe it is a good thing.
Yeah, I was actually listening to this guy who helps people with binge eating disorders. And he's got like a team of people who put out support and create a supportive environment for people to suffer with binge eating. And what caught my attention was his hook for the video was being overweight saved your life. And yeah, and so, and sorry, no, it was like binge eating saved your life or something like that. And at first I was like, whoa, hold on. But what he was saying was like, food was your comfort. Food was the thing that stopped you from doing something worse. Although it wasn't like a very good coping mechanism, it helps you get through to whatever you were going through at that stage. And now it's time to let go. And now it's time to find like healthier coping mechanisms. I can't remember how I got onto that thread. Oh, because you were saying that for some women, that their quality of life improves if they want to gain weight that fast, or they want to gain that amount of weight. Like, as long as your quality of life is improving and that's what your values are behind, go for it. Like, if you value being able to socialize, go out and drink, spend time with your friends and things like that, and you value them over your health and fitness, that's fine, because that's you. We can't expect everyone to sort of like put their health and fitness and their physique above everything else.
Right. Absolutely. And I just think that like holding on to that stage physique, like as long as possible, I kind of did like an Instagram like rant about this, where it's like, we will cling on to that for dear life. And it's like, yeah, but you can't, we're gaining weight. We have to eat more calories and stuff. But like, you're trying to hold on to like these, I would say like almost obsessive prep protocols, where it's like, oh, I'm not going to change the foods because like those are the foods that I ate in prep and my body's going to like react differently. And like we hold on to these things for so long, but it's like, yeah, but at what cost, right? If we're risking like having a fucking social life, then yeah. I think we have to like jump through some of the questions, but I want to go through what you think like personality traits of successful bodybuilding, and then red flags or warning signs prior to competing.
And then after that, I want to go to, if I just want to ask you if you've ever discouraged anyone from competing. Personality traits for a successful bodybuilder. Okay, so I think the red flags and warning signs would be easier for me to answer. And I think that's going to be people who are very self-conscious and hyper-focused on their physique. One, being self-conscious isn't going to serve you well on a bodybuilding show. Like, you've got to get on stage in a bikini and act like you're the most confident woman in the world. Like, being self-conscious isn't going to do shit for you. But I definitely think, like, for me, it's much easier to pick up on the warning signs of someone who's suffering with eating disorders, because I've been through it. And I think, like, if we notice that they're doing more cardio than what they should be doing, if we notice that, if their friends and family notice that they're starting to eat in private, if they're starting to hide away from food, if they're avoiding social events that involve food, if they're getting things like, if they start cooking for other people but not themselves, kind of thing.
Okay.
And like, watching other people eat, and just being, I think that generally, like, being more antisocial and hiding when they're eating, wanting to eat alone, not wanting to eat out in public and things like that.
Do you think it's more acceptable for that to be a thing when they get closer to a competition?
I don't think it should be. I think that it's okay if they want to meal prep in that, because yes, they've got a competition in mind and they've got a goal in mind. But I still think that it's very important that they still attend social events and they still try to keep up with that life outside of bodybuilding, because then it makes the transition after bodybuilding, like we said at the start, getting that identity back much easier.
I totally agree. I think something like kind of like overstepping protocols. And I think there are certain prep protocols that need to be kept in prep and only in prep, because if you drag them into your off season or after competing, it diminishes, I guess, the effectiveness of it if you want to implement it later. And like holding on to, like, okay, let's say if you're only eating certain foods, well, then your digestive enzymes are only going to be able to break down certain foods, right? Or kind of like jumping the gun when it comes to doing protocols in prep. So maybe someone is like 30 weeks out and they're like, oh, well, coach only told me to do like 8,000 steps, but I'm going to do 10,000, right? Starting to like amplify that. It's like, okay, well, then when the time comes when we need to increase, we have to increase even more. So it's kind of like doing more harm than good. So I think things like that, there's definitely a time and a place. I know that one of the questions you wanted to ask is if I'm prepping anyone. I guess I'll let out the secret. I do have one client right now and we're going to do a show together. It's going to be our first one together. So I'm really, really excited for, and we're not looking at something, we don't even have a date locked in, but we're looking at like June or July. So in like 8 months from now. And she was talking about, this was a couple weeks ago, that she didn't want to go out for her boyfriend's birthday because she's like, oh, there's going to be food and I don't know what the meal is. I was like, there's not a time to do that right now. And I was like, there's a time for prep protocols and we don't have to get this focused. So just making sure that there's like the difference between prep protocols. Like I not that I would consider that would be like a red flag, but I'm like, okay, like, hey, let's hold on for a moment. So I think a really good personality trait of successful bodybuilding is knowing when to make the choices when things do need to get dialed up, and knowing that there's a time and a place for them, and not being like, oh, I can do everything at once.
Yeah. Have you ever discouraged someone from competing?
Have I ever discouraged someone from competing? I think I have.
Yeah, I think I have, but more in the sense of what we kind of spoke about with Sunny, when someone's like, I want to do wellness, or they want to do a category that they're not fitted into, and I'm uncomfortable with either pushing the compounds that far, or I just want to be really, really realistic with them and tell them the time frame. And it's like, look, if you're not married to investing that amount of your life into bodybuilding, do a photo shoot.
Yeah. And I think that's a great option. That's something that Paul really emphasizes, is that he does, like, the goal is the photo shoot. And I think that it's like, if we're thinking about it, it's basically the same thing. Like, we're getting ready for one short-term event that takes place over the span of like half a day, and we get all dressed up and we take the pictures and it lasts 15 seconds and then we're done. It's like basically the same thing. But I think there's many different goals, like doing a photo shoot, that, yeah, you don't have to go through the extremes of competition prep.
Yeah. Do you think that some people choose bodybuilding as a way to manage their emotional eating?
Fuck yeah.
I do. I know quite a few people who have had eating disorders, myself included, that have gone into a bodybuilding prep. And I feel like a lot of them, they might not be so deep in their eating disorder anymore, but I feel like a lot of them haven't developed the skills to be able to manage their food and nutrition properly, and they resort to bodybuilding as a way to kind of reinforce that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I respect that so much, and I can definitely see that. I've seen that from other people, like other competitors that I know, new competitors, or if they already have like I would say, I wouldn't even say a mild eating disorder, but their attachment to food or how they perceive food, it's not in a position that could be as good as it should be prior to getting into it. Like, if we're really, really fixated on food, then it just gets amplified.
Yeah. If I was to kind of give someone a suggestion on what they, I did say on my stories the other day that I do think that people need to have a strong identity outside of bodybuilding before they enter a prep. Yeah. But I think if I was ideally looking at someone who came from an eating disorder background and then was looking to do a bodybuilding show, it wouldn't be a flat out no, but I think that they should have a time where they learn how to intuitive eat. So whether or not, like, say if we had like the pillars, it would be like, okay, so like rock bottom is your eating disorder, and then you go through recovery, and then you have a couple of years of intuitive eating and you learn how to manage that, and then maybe go back to the controlled environment of a prep.
So you think that if someone wanted to do a prep or wanted to compete, and they have, let's just say, an unhealthy relationship with food or not as good as it could be, you think that they should go through a phase of intuitive eating first?
Yeah, I feel like they should just have that skill.
And for how long would you, let's say if it was a potential client of yours, how long would you encourage intuitive eating? Because I feel like some people would be like, oh, I'll do it for 2 weeks.
Oh no, I mean this before even working with a coach. Like I feel like, yeah, if they've come from an eating disorder background, I feel like they should just practice it and know that they have that confidence in themselves and that confidence in their body, that their body's not going to fall apart kind of thing, and that their physique's not going to blow out. I feel like it's just developing that trust within yourself before going into a prep.
How long do you think, or maybe you have this from experience, how long do you think going through intuitive eating should last?
I don't know. I feel like it'd be different for everyone because I feel like it would still be very much based on their emotions towards food. Like, for example, when I was in the Butterfly Day program, we had a day where we did, it was like a food challenge day, and it was on every Thursday, and for lunch we had to go out to a restaurant and we had to eat whatever was served to us. But to me, like, that wasn't helping anything. Like, I was still hyper focused on it, and I still got very, very high anxiety from it. It wasn't a fun experience. I didn't enjoy the socialization around it. I very much hated those days. And so it's sort of like, I think it's about, and whether or not it's full on intuitive eating or whether it's not, just being able to have that flexibility within your plan. Dean McKillop, who's an Australian bodybuilding coach, he put out, he's maintained really good condition and he stopped bodybuilding. But he says, like, what he does is if he goes out for a meal, then he doesn't have fats at meal 2 and 3 kind of thing. Or if he eats, if he forgets a meal, or, you know, he doesn't have time to eat that meal, then he will add 33% to the other meals kind of thing. And that to me is a really good way to, yes, you still got rules and you've got set rules that you kind of abide by, but it's very flexible and it still allows you to live your life to the fullest.
I love that, because I wanted to go down like this side little rabbit hole of this tangent, and that like ties into it really nicely. I feel like bodybuilding has amplified my relationship with food in a really, really good way. It's taught me about like my food allergies, because like I never would have done this stuff if I never competed. And I think I said in the last episode, like, if I didn't get into bodybuilding, I wouldn't take my health as seriously. I wouldn't get all the blood testing done. So I feel like there's a lot of good things that, for me at least, have stemmed from bodybuilding, but it's improved my relationship because it's taught me more about how to, like, yes, food is fuel and food is nutrients, but also food is like social enjoyment and things like that. And it is memories and experiences, right? But it's being able to teach me more about like the difference between them and being like, it's just food. It doesn't control me. And I'm able to, I feel like I can almost appreciate food more than I thought I could.
Yeah.
If
So
that makes sense.
It's easier for you to kind of view food as something that fuels your body and it fuels your performance and it makes you healthy and allows you to do the things that you want to do each day, rather than looking at it as something that you have to do kind of thing.
Yeah. It's also amplified, like, I've got, and not that it's forced me to be more restrictive, but I'm more clear on like, yes, I want that, or no, I don't want that. And that's not from a restrictive, like, oh, I can't fit it in my macro standpoint. It is more of like I know what I want, I know what I like, and I know what reacts well and not well in my body. And I feel like a lot of that, for me at least, it is like almost more of like a respecting my body kind of standpoint, if that makes sense.
I feel like it's more from my perspective, I feel like what would really help women is, and I say women, but I know that men equally suffer with, or not equally, but they do suffer with eating disorders and body image issues and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think learning about nutrition and learning like what's actually in that food, and not from a fear factor kind of perspective, but from a perspective that like, hey, if you don't feel like rice, you can have bread. and you can have cereal. And yeah, like it doesn't have to be sweet potato and stuff like that, like it in brown rice or whatnot. Like it's carbs. You can have whichever one you want.
Yeah, I think that's so good. There's so many like bodybuilders who they're either flexible dieting or meal plan, right? And I think there's a time and a place for a meal plan, but I also think that having that skill of flexible dieting and just exactly how you said, understanding, and you don't have to like break it down to like the molecules and know exactly how many grams of carbs are in something versus something else, but knowing that you can swap something like red for white rice, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, and I think like what you're saying about bodybuilding, kind of creating that healthy relationship with food. One thing that I really encourage people to do is once they hit their micronutrient targets, so not micronutrient, and they've got all their nutrients in, there's no benefit from consuming more than that. Once you've hit your targets, fine. Now go have something hedonic. Have something that you want to enjoy. Like, you know, go have an ice cream or have like buy a little Kit Kat bar or something like that. Don't buy the whole packet, just buy something that you can get in single servings, but learn that it's okay to have foods that you enjoyed, as long as you're, you know, the 80% of it is the whole foods and the nutrient dense foods and stuff like that.
I love that. I love that concept.
Yeah.
I'm going to share that. Okay. What else?
The cost of trying to maintain stage lean condition, both physically and mentally. I feel like physically we went over this a lot with the previous podcast as far as the relative energy deficiency. So we see a decline in endogenous hormones, and that can have really serious effects on their health, both like their cardiovascular health and just the way they feel, the way that they perform, and their reproductive health. Mentally, we know that body weight or lack of body weight, and so like in the literature is termed as like what your BMI is associated with eating disorders, and not from the sense that being overweight equals this and being underweight equals that, but your brain, the chemical signaling in your brain does kind of change and can heighten the symptoms of an eating disorder and make it much harder to recover, which is why weight restoration is such a huge part of eating disorder recovery.
Yeah, I think there's so many things for me. I like to know that there's like in prep or when we're like around this stage, there's like a time and a place to put prep first, right? And if you are you step off stage and prep is still like the number one thing, or like trying to maintain that, the thing is like for us to get to that level of conditioning, in order to hold that, we have to keep doing those protocols or amplify them even more. We can't keep running that. Otherwise we would keep competing. Like usually people stop competing for the season or whatever. It's because like you've hit like your cap, right? And it's like, we can't compete. If we could keep competing, we would, but we can't. So like there's a time and a place, and knowing that like prep has a time to make it its priority in your life, whether it's with a relationship, whether it's in social life. Like I'm sure the same thing for you, but for me, when I get close to a show, my work is not the most important thing for me. My relationship is not the most important thing for me. It's like prep is number one and nothing will come in between that. That cannot be held in everything in life. Otherwise, I'm not going to work and I'm not going to have like a partner with me.
Yeah.
And knowing kind of like those boundaries. Maybe that means like sitting down and having a conversation with colleagues or coworkers or with like your significant other, being like, okay, give me like a week to get through, and then let's start incorporating like other protocols. Like let's start going out for dinner or things like that.
I think that's a huge part in everyone's journey through fitness. I think like communicating with your peers and making them aware of your goals and letting them know how they can support you is hugely important. I had a client message me the other day saying that, hey, I just want you to know that I had another sober weekend, but my friends weren't too keen on it. And I said, whoa, hold up. You need to have a conversation with those friends and tell them that what they're doing is not supportive of your goals, and be very super clear with them what they can do to support you. And if they're still not on board with that, you need to find new friends.
Yep. I full fucking agree with that.
Yeah. And that's like any kind of goal that you have, tell people and let them know how they can help and support you. Even give them things not to do if you need to.
Yeah.
Like, tell you to drink.
So I want to share a little story. I went out on Friday night with some of my girlfriends, and we went out for dinner, and it's way fucking past my bedtime. So we have our dinner, and it was like about 9 o'clock. Usually 9 is like when I go to bed. And it was my girlfriend. We went out, and one of the other girls, she's a bodybuilder as well. She's in wellness. So like she gets it. She understands all of this. And she like looks over at me. She's like, do you want to go? Like, do you have to go to bed? She's like, I understand and I respect your routine. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in my off season. Like, it's okay if I stay out like an hour later or something like that. But also for her, like that was the night of her free meal that our coach gave her. We don't do cheat meals. We do free meals. So she had her free meal and she loves dessert. I'm like, no, like there's a time and a place to be like super adherent on protocols, but like having friends who like understand and respect. And I'm like, no. I'm in my off season, so you can enjoy your dessert and we'll stay out an extra hour later and we're all going to be okay. Because like, yeah, having friends and having that communication, so fucking important.
Yeah. Also just touching on the mental side of things, when you do have less body fat, you have less leptin in your system, because leptin is stored in adipose tissue.
Mhm.
That hunger signaling isn't going to be, the satiety signaling to tell you that you're full isn't going to be there, and your ghrelin hormone is going to be elevated, so you're going to be seeking more food, and that all results in you being super like hyper food focused. And you've probably noticed yourself, when we're in prep, we spend a lot of time looking at cooking channels and things like that, and it's like, because your brain's just food focused, like it's just seeking food.
I was gonna say, I think that's like totally a red flag when I see people planning their like post-show meal when they're like 2 weeks out or like 6 months out. There was one person, I can't even, obviously it doesn't matter who it was, but it was like the night before her show and she was baking treats for after the show. And I'm like, that is such a red flag. Like such a red flag. I feel like if you're starting to post like all this food porn and stuff, I absolutely think that there's like a red flag, not even just with competing, but with eating disorders.
I had a client ask me what to do post-show, and I said, I'll have a plan fully set up for you, but for that night, what's your favorite cuisine? And he said Italian. I said, I want you to go to an Italian restaurant. I want you to order one main and one dessert, and that's it.
I love that. I love that structure and the control. I think that's so important. I think that I want to ask you, because you have the experience from it, not just like my opinion, but like, where do coaches like commonly go wrong in programming, especially when it comes to like a post-show diet? Like, what do you think should be the standard for the post-show phase from a coach perspective?
I think as far as like going into, because I know that was the first part of the question, is going into the prep. I think like coaches always go, okay, you need 16-week prep or you need a 20-week prep kind of thing. And it's like, no, like you need to understand that individual and what's needed from them for you to be able to get them comfortably to stage looking their best. So regardless, there's no timeline that's set in stone, and you know, you need to do what's going to work for that client. Even maybe around like kind of events that they have coming up or the life that they live, like you need to plan it all around that. I think post-show, you should always have a plan already in place before they step on stage, and preferably before their peak week, so they're not stressing about it on peak week. But then setting up a call with your client and having that communication and going, okay, this is what the post-show is going to look like. Do you understand everything? Are you on board with all of this? Do you have all your meals ready and prepped for this? Like, is there anything that's going to kind of set back or be a limiting factor in you being able to achieve this? And is there any hurdles that we need to address now? Because I want to be super clear now, and I want you to have full trust in me that I'm going to manage this as best I can, as long as you can implement it all.
I agree. Do you think that it should be a coach's responsibility to have a post-show like reverse phase?
Yeah. I think that the coach should fully have it set up. I know that I'm referring back to Dean McKillop, but I know with his coaching, he actually has in his contract that if he takes you through a prep, you have to stay on for 6 weeks after the prep.
I think that is the smartest thing to do.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be a non-negotiable.
Yeah, because I feel like clients, how many times have you heard a client leave a coach and say that he ruined her post-show? And it's like, when did you stop working with him? And she's like, oh, after my show. Okay, well, how the fuck did he ruin it? Like, you didn't even give him a chance. Like, you didn't communicate. You kind of just, you wanted to do your own thing because you were afraid of letting go of the physique. You didn't give him or her a chance to get you healthy again.
Yeah, I agree. So for anyone who's listening who wants to compete, make sure that your coach has a plan afterwards. And that doesn't necessarily mean like that game plan has to be set up at the beginning, but knowing like, okay, yes, we're going to step on stage and then we're going to work together for at least 6 weeks after. Or even like I have some friends or other competitors that I know that their coach will give them like their peak week plan and then be like, this is what we're going to do afterwards, or at least for the next like 3 days afterwards. And then we'll reassess from there and then keep going. I think that's so important.
So like obviously it's going to be kind of like dependent on how their body reacts post-show. So like I think having that post-show week planned out is very, very important. But I will plan out a roadmap for months afterwards saying like, this is how long we're in a recovery phase. It isn't the time where you're going to be pushing training performance. We're going to be doing very minimal training volume to just maintain the amount of muscle that you have. You're not going to push anything. You're not going to push the food super high. You're just going to get to a point where we get you to a healthy body fat percentage within the 6 week mark. And then after that, that's when we can start focusing your off season. And that's when we go hard again. But this next 6 weeks, it's just going to be chilling.
Yeah. It's basically like if we're putting a lifestyle client through like a diet phase and then we put them back into maintenance for a little bit before we start to build again. It's like that just amplified.
Yeah.
Like everything else is like heightened and stimulated there. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that should be a non-negotiable.
Yeah. What I might do is in our resources tab with the Excel sheet, I might link Paul's book if anyone wants to check it out because it is super helpful. It's a shame that he didn't make the call today. But hopefully we did a good enough job, guys.
I think so. So yeah, the resources that we would, I guess, like recommend is, I just made a note to link Paul's book because I think it's really, really good. And then just making sure that like your coach has a plan after the show and making sure that you have good communication, whether it's with colleagues, friends, your partner, someone else to support you, like have that really, really good communication. I think that is one of the best like free resources that we can have.
I think too, as far as like I think they would be the best bang for your buck. But then I think also if you learn how to identify your emotions and not just like, oh, I feel sad or I feel angry or I feel depressed kind of thing, like really get granular. And an emotional reel is really helpful for that because then once you identify that emotion and you can figure out what led to that emotion, then you can kind of break that chain so that it doesn't develop into any negative reactions.
Yeah, I think some kind of like journaling is always good, and journaling or meditation or whatever can just be like however you want. Like journaling can just be like a brain dump of doodles and words and point forms like in a book or whatever, but like just releasing like, yeah, exactly how you said, like feelings and emotions and stuff and be like, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? Like what led to it? And being able to do that like before you compete and during competition and after competition and just letting those feelings kind of like be there and have that space and being okay, why am I feeling that way? And then communicate it. Yeah.
I had a client once who just refused to journal or meditate or anything like that. And I get it. Like it's a very, if your mind's not set on doing it, you're not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
But then I found out that she likes candles. And I said, you're going to spend 3 minutes each night watching a candle burn. And she loved it.
And like, that's meditation. Like that, like you're being calm and you're taking yourself out of like the busyness and the noise of life. And that just like kind of like grounds you and centers you. I think that's It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah. Go on a 20-minute walk without your phone, without headphones. Do whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. This was so good. I'm so glad we did this. Okay. Let's wrap that up. So are we good?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So that is it for this episode of Femme Radio.
So make sure you are subscribed and connected with us for more discussions on empowering conversations that redefine health. I need to stop.